Joining us this morning to discuss the topic further is Andreas Umland, political scientist from the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies. Good morning and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning, thanks for having me.
So now let's start with Ukraine. What is the progress that Ukraine has made so far towards EU accession?
The progress is marked by the progress in the EU's reactions to Ukrainian domestic developments. We had the EU candidacy in 2022. The same then went for Moldova. Later on, Georgia followed. And both Ukraine and Moldova have since then continued domestic reforms and preparation for accession to the EU, to the degree that now the negotiations are going to start for the accession. And one can already speculate now that the Ukrainian and Moldovan accession procedures are going to be different from previous accessions to the EU. For instance, the accession of Poland to the EU. There's a different situation, and it's going to function in a different way than previous EU accessions.
And now we talked about this huge opportunity for both countries, and I would want to reverse that and look at potential challenges and obstacles in the accession negotiations. What are they for both Ukraine and Moldova?
Well, the most fundamental for both of these countries, and by the way, also for Georgia, is that they do not fully control their state territory. In Moldova, that's Transnistria, which is controlled by a Russian puppet state. And in Ukraine, these are the 5 fully or partly occupied territories. And of course, for Ukraine, a major obstacle is also the war, which absorbs a lot of energy and time and resources of Ukraine. On the other hand, for countries like Moldova, and even more so for Ukraine, and perhaps also one day for Georgia, this accession process is psychologically enormously important, because this accession provides the EU accession a prospect for the future that makes the whole current fight more sensible. Ukraine has, of course, like Moldova and Georgia, the classical problem with the rule of law and with corruption. This is all very well known, but Ukraine has made advances in that. The perception index for corruption in Ukraine has improved in the way that there's now a perception of less corruption than there used to be before. But this is going to be also for the next years a major challenge for Ukraine.
I just want to go back for a second to the point that you made with it being psychologically important. And exactly, so how important is it for the people of Ukraine, both for the citizens, of course, and for the soldiers on the front lines, to get this news of the start of accession talks to the European Union, as of course the country continues fending off Russia's illegal invasion of its territory?
Yes, this is, I think, enormously important, because it sort of paints a different, you could say, a parallel reality for Ukraine. The current present reality is very dark, of course, and sometimes quite literally dark, because there's not enough electricity to put on light. But this accession process with the European Union, which is now much more going forward than the NATO accession, is exactly the sort of reason that, one of the reasons that Ukraine is fighting this war, to have a better future, to be reunited with Europe, not just with Europe as a continent, but with the European Union, and then to have, at least for the children of the current soldiers and the grandchildren, a better, a more decent and more dignified life. And therefore, this is one of the reasons I think that Ukraine is so resilient, that people are staying in Ukraine, that they're fighting it out. They're fighting not only on the front line, but also in the rear, because they have now this this aim to fight for. They could, of course, also simply emigrate. Now it's very easy for Ukrainians to simply move physically to the European Union, but now they have also the prospect that their country will be part of the European Union. In a way, it's also perhaps a measure to prevent people from moving en masse to the European Union by themselves.
And it is indeed a message of hope for both Ukraine and Moldova, but there is still a very long road ahead. Andreas Umland, thank you so much for joining us and for providing your expert insights on the matter.
Thanks for having me again.